Hey there. Welcome in today. Today we're going to talk about how to cope better, which I'm guessing most of us want to understand. Most of us want to know how to do. We're getting through the days and the weeks, right? But if we could cope better with what life throws at us and just how wild the world can be, um, I don't know, also just like the general hourly details of the day, I'm guessing we'd all welcome that. So, I want to start by unpacking a bit how we cope. There are two ways in which we cope with all the things. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. And I think by pulling back the curtain on our coping mechanisms and ways of trying to handle life, we can understand a bit better about what's working for us, what's not working for us, and what we could and perhaps want to, maybe should, I hate using that word, want to do differently. By virtue of all the ways in which we cope, we can find better strategies to cope in healthier ways. Okay, so that was a whole word salad. Let's just get into it, right? I want to actually talk first about the difference between stress and stressors because there's the stress, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the worry in our lives. And then there are the things that cause the stress, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the worry. And those are different things. It's one thing to feel stress, it's another thing to be dealing with a stressor. So let's start here. And by starting here, I also just want to say we're going to way oversimplify this for the sake of conversation today. We could spend a lot of time here reflecting, getting self aware. So don't skip this step just because we're kind of glossing over it. We're going to make some assumptions today, but take some time with this when you can. That said, in super simple terms, stressors are the things that activate the stress response in your body. So you have the perception that you are under threat, right? That you're in danger. Your sympathetic nervous system gets activated. You get that huge dump of adrenaline and you feel what we call anxiety or stress. Stressors, they can be internal or external. So internal stressors are things like thoughts, belief systems, self talk, self image, maybe your personal history, your past experiences, what you imagine, right? The fantasy future, it's never here, but it's full of all of those what if, worst case scenario thoughts. So those are internal stressors. External stressors could look like the people in your life, work, health, finances, family, conversations, societal pressures, global pandemics, political uncertainty, war, social issues. You get the idea. Anything coming at you that doesn't originate inside your own mind, body, or heart. Yeah. So there are internal and external stressors. Told you we were going to fly through this for the sake of getting to coping and how to cope better. You still with me? Okay. There are stressors. Then there's the stress, right? You have sensed some internal or external stressor, and then your body gets dysregulated. Your nervous system lights on fire, and you're feeling stress. You're feeling actively anxious. So, stressors lead to the feeling of stress. Now, obviously, these two are very closely related, they're tangled up together, but but I want you to appreciate that dealing with the stress is very different from dealing with the stressor. Let's do an example to talk through this. Let's say that you're worried about a conversation that you need to have with someone who's really important to you. Maybe a boss, a close friend, your partner, your teenager, someone that means a lot to you, and the conversation is meaningful, but you're not sure how it's going to go. Okay. So there's the stressor, in this case, the conversation, and maybe the relative of unknown of how that conversation is going to go, how the person that you're talking with is going to receive the conversation, how they're going to react. Right. So that's the stressor. It's an external stressor in this case, the other person, right? That conversation. And then there's the stress, the anxiety that you're feeling. Your heart is pounding. Your palms are sweaty leading up to this conversation and you're feeling antsy, right? You're pacing around because you just can't sit still. You feel the stress. So, two different things, right? Stressor and stress. So, you have the conversation. Whew, it's over with. Went pretty well, in fact. Yay. So, the stressor, it's gone. It's over, right? The conversation is a thing of the past. But maybe you notice that you're still a bit sweaty. You're still kind of agitated and fidgety. So the stressor is gone. Stress, not so much. In this case, this hypothetical situation we're talking about, the stressor was kind of like a light switch, right? There was a moment it was over and it was just alleviated. But your body is taking some time to come down off of that dysregulation. The stress is not like a light switch. Now, there are other examples, right? There's plenty of times when the stressor is absolutely not like a light switch. Sometimes these can be what are called chronic stressors, which we never really get full relief from because the stressor just keeps coming at us. If you have a tricky relationship with your parents, perhaps, or you have an ongoing health issue that you're dealing with, or there's financial stress in your life with no end in sight. These are what's called chronic stressors because they just keep coming at you. And of course, there are other times when you feel the weight of stress, like the feeling of anxiety sometimes, it just evaporates off of you in an instant. Like currently, we're all glued to the Olympics, right? And you see these athletes getting ready. It's their turn on the beam or their heat is coming up, swimming or track or whatever. And you see them, right? Game face on, earbuds in, just stressed. They're prepping. They're where they need to be mentally, emotionally, physically to get ready and to compete. Yes, the event is the stressor, right? They're in the biggest competition of their lives. That's the stressor. And they're feeling it. They're feeling the stress of that. And then they do their thing, right? They're freaking brilliant. Aren't the Olympics so much fun? Like, even if they biff it, and some of them have, right? They're at the Olympics. They're still all total geniuses at what they're doing. So they do their thing. And then you see this immediate relief. Stress over, gone, right? Just poof. So, stressors and stress, two different things, completely interrelated. So, should we talk about what we came here to talk about today? Finally, how do we cope? How do we cope with the stressors and stresses in our lives? All right, we cope in two ways. We either cope maladaptively or we cope in an adaptive way. So let's break this down. Maladaptive coping. To give you a somewhat technical definition, maladaptive coping strategies work to reduce the symptoms of stress in the short term, but they do not nourish you, meaning they are not medium or long-term fixes, and they usually only address the stress that you're feeling in the moment, not the stressor, not the thing that created the stress in the first place. So you can guess it's some maladaptive coping techniques, right? Drinking, that's a good one. It's the one I chose for a long time. Scrolling social media, overwatching Netflix, overeating, all kinds of substances, really. Drugs, food, alcohol, smoking, vaping, right? You name it. All pretty decent ways of escaping the moment and numbing the stress. But of course, they're not at all effective in managing the stressors. And they can actually lead towards their own issues and problems, creating a whole different stressor and more stress in your life. I have talked to many, many, many people over the years who fall into a maladaptive coping mechanism to deal with stress, and then they create a new stressor and more stress in their lives. And then they come to me with that quote unquote problem. I've talked to so many people over the past decade who think drinking is their problem, or overeating, or overworking, or that the job they have, they think that's the problem. when in fact, a lot of times these are maladaptive coping mechanisms for a deeper, more underlying problem that they were trying to fix years or decades ago. And listen, we've all done this. This is not judgment. This is an observation. We all do this. It's a very human thing to do for sure, but it distracts us from what's really going on. And it piles up a whole traffic jam of stuff that just doesn't need to be there in the first place. Okay, a few other examples of maladaptive coping strategies. These are more subtle, so look for these. Rumination, emotional numbing, trying to escape or avoid things, procrastination. It's a good one. Blaming or self-blaming. If you notice you're getting caught in patterns of trying to either unburden yourself of all responsibility, or paradoxically, if you're trying to take on all of the responsibility in an area of your life, like at work or at home, right? Risk-taking behaviors. This is what I call the screw it stuff. Like, oh, well, what does it matter? I might as well just fill in the blank with something extreme or borderline dangerous or just completely out of the norm for you. Another one is anxious avoidance. When we do this weird pendulum swing of like grasping onto things really, really, really tightly and then pushing them away, right? And then pulling and then pushing, like we just can't settle into that middle space and be. So, if we can only figure out how to come at things in an adaptive way, right? Adaptive coping strategies are a different way to handle the stressors and stress of life. So, some obvious ones, things like sleep, rest, downtime. These are all good, right? Planning ahead, being careful not to overplan, exercise and movement, going for a walk. This is very important for a lot of reasons, right? Talking things out, either with a friend or a family member, seeing a therapist, working with a mindfulness teacher. Sometimes you need to vent and get things off your chest, right? Other times you need help to really process how you're thinking and feeling so that you can move forward in a healthy and grounded way. Meditation can be helpful. Mindfulness practices can help. Staying connected to good friends, engaging in hobbies or activities that are purely fun, totally just for enjoyment, that can really help. There are so many adaptive coping strategies. Those are obviously some kind of universal broad ideas, but think about what works for you, what you love and need, and what fills you up. Now, a clue that you have found something that is an adaptive coping strategy is when it's healthy, when it feels good, and when it brings you closer to the kind of person you want to be in the short and long term. I'm going to borrow one of James Clear's phrases. He uses this in his book, Atomic Habits, a lot. He talks about casting a vote for the kind of person you want to be. Just consistently and continuously showing up, being healthy, whole, honest, real, and you. For me, some of those things are yoga and walking and reading. Like these are things I love to do for sure. They're also ways that I can cope with stressors and the stress of life. Also, of course, talking with friends, sometimes going for a walk alone and listening to music or a podcast or an audiobook. Sometimes just listening to the noises of nature, right? Being outside, getting under trees and listening to the birds. My people know what I'm talking about. All of this is super helpful. Now, before we go, I want to caution you about one small little thing because, like most things, this isn't a super simple, cut and dry, black and white thing, meaning maladaptive things aren't always only maladaptive, and adaptive coping strategies aren't completely and totally only adaptive coping strategies. I know, I know. But let's think about this. Let's take something like Netflix, for example. This is something that you could use for good or for evil, right? Two different scenarios. One way to Netflix is to get home after work, run around like crazy for a couple of hours with dinner and kids and activities and cleaning, taking the dog out. And then everybody's in bed. You crash on the couch and you don't even care what you're watching. You're just in that tired but wired place and you want anything that will distract and entertain you. So you scroll through and then you find a kind of mindless show that you can watch, but also kind of ignore. And you binge through 5 episodes while also kind of numbing out on social media on your phone. So you've got multiple screens going, and then, oh crap, it's after midnight and you should have been in bed hours ago. You drag yourself to bed knowing you're going to wake up short on sleep. You're kind of beating yourself up for watching so much TV, and you didn't even really enjoy it, right? It left you feeling kind of empty. So, okay, that's one way. That's a maladaptive way, let's say. Just hit the easy button. You wait for Netflix to sweep you off to some other place for a while so that you can avoid your own reality. Yeah. But you can also use it in an adaptive way. And no, you don't have to watch some highbrow educational documentary either. In fact, let's say that you're going to watch the exact same crap. Okay. But now you've labeled it as your guilty pleasure show. And you know when you get home from work that you have 2 episodes to look forward to tonight when the house quiets down. You're going to save that really good piece of chocolate. You're going to get your comfy PJs on. And when the kids go to bed, you're going to sit down and you're going to relish that show for a full hour. So you're coming at it with intentionality. You know exactly what you're up to. You're not hoping for this ridiculous show to make you feel better. Okay. No, you're going to watch this show. You're going to maybe text a friend about it because it's so absurd. It makes you laugh and it gives you and this friend something to connect over and kind of make fun of. And at the end of episode 2, you shut it off, you get ready for bed, and you're asleep at a reasonable time. So you see, it's the energy behind it. It's how deliberate and purposeful you can be with it. When we try and escape from our lives by looking around and outsourcing our attention to something like Netflix, we're hosed. We aren't relaxing, we're avoiding. There's a huge difference. So you can be clear and clean about what you're up to, even if it's total trash TV, even if you're eating junk food, even if you're working late. These are all things you can do in an adaptive way that feels relaxing or serves what you need or want to do, or heck, it just feels good, right? That's one way to approach those things. Or you can zone out and instead of bathing the whole thing in awareness, you're just trying to avoid and resist and basically not be here. You're trying to get as unpresent as possible. That's a red flag that whatever you're doing, it's maladaptive. Personally, I try and just go to bed when I'm in that mode. Might be time to just hit the hard reset button for the day and just go to sleep. Try again in the morning, right? Now, if it's not time for bed or if I'm not tired, walking and breathing, these are things that are tricky to do in a maladaptive way. Because honestly, walking is it's time consuming enough that you just almost can't overdo it. And breathing, well, as long as you're not actively inducing a panic attack through breathing exercises, you're probably onto something at least neutral. And at best, something that's healthy and supportive for your nervous system. So, yes, I did want to point that out. There are ways to eat and work and relax and engage in your hobbies, watch TV, be on your phone. There's lots of activities that can walk a really fine line between adaptive and maladaptive. All you need to do is be aware. It always comes back to that, doesn't it? That we need to be aware of what we're up to. We need to just bathe it in self awareness and try to be as hip as possible to what we're actually doing. So, how do we cope better? We'll finally answer this question. And here it is: more adaptive coping strategies, fewer maladaptive coping strategies. That's it. Be on to yourself. Get honest with yourself and see where you zone out, where you're trying to avoid feeling something, doing something, or just being with yourself. Less of that. and more taking care of yourself by doing things that bring you closer to yourself, to who you want to be, things that are healthy and nourishing. That doesn't mean you can't have dessert or watch Netflix or work late. It just means be on to yourself with it. Do it with intention. If you're asleep at the wheel and some part of your brain is hitting the easy button and getting you to avoid life by doing whatever you're doing, no, no, that's not it. But if you're aware, right, if you're actively choosing it and if it feels good, you're probably onto something. Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's it for today. One super quick announcement for you before we go. And I will tell you more about this in the next few episodes, but I want to let you know now that it's coming because I know now that it's coming. I'm going to be teaching a fall mindfulness course. It's going to start on September 9th. That's a Monday. It's going to run for 6 weeks, every Monday for 6 weeks, starting on September 9th. So I will have links and details and all that good stuff for you soon. I want to work with you. I want to see you in that class. So, again, more soon, but a fall mindfulness class is coming with some easy but very practical ways to transform anxiety. Sound good? Okay, I will see you next week at the same time, same place for more transforming anxiety. And until then, please take care.